I jolted awake from my dream, eyes wide open, scanning the familiar room before me. Subconsciously, I touched my body. My arms and legs were still there. I let out a long sigh of relief. I swiftly turned on my phone, and the hot topic that came into view was a man walking with a distorted gait in the street, biting anyone he saw. Indeed, there had been an identical hot topic before. And 8 hours after this hot topic, the zombies would break out in full force. I checked the time. It was 12 noon. I tried my best to calm my nerves, while my mind was racing at high speed. Remembering this time period, my so-called mother was taking my younger brother out for a meal. All the things they had done to me in my previous life flashed through my mind like a movie. I could no longer contain the grief and indignation in my heart. With a loud sob, I vomited, spewing all over the floor, and my body trembled uncontrollably with fear. The zombie outbreak came so abruptly. In the previous life, there was hardly any food stored at home. Yet, my mother still indulged my younger brother to squander the meager food. Eventually, our family could only barely survive by drinking rainwater. My younger brother, who had always been pampered, couldn't bear such hardship. After drinking rainwater for a day, he started throwing tantrums, clamoring for meat. However, instead of going out to search for food, they made a heinous decision to eat me. That night, due to long-term high tension and extreme lack of food, I unconsciously fell into a deep slumber. When I woke up again, they had already tied me to the head of the bed. I watched in horror as the shiny kitchen knife in my younger brother's hand was gesturing towards my foot. Instinctively, I kicked him in the face. Before I could react, with a scream from my mother, my younger brother, covering his face resentfully, swung the knife down. A chunk of flesh was hacked off my instep. The excruciating pain spread throughout my body instantly. Coupled with the intense visual stimulation, I couldn't help but let out a loud scream. The zombies outside the door seemed to have heard the commotion, and were pounding on our door frantically, as if they were going to break it down. "Shut up. Do you want us all to die?" My mother rushed to me in one stride, slapped me hard across the face, then casually stuffed a smelly sock into my mouth, and squatted down to bandage my bleeding foot. Day after day, I watched helplessly as my foot, leg, and arm were gradually eaten by them. Once, my younger brother reheated some meat, and deliberately came up to me, asking if I wanted to eat. His revolting appearance made me vomit all over the bed on the spot. Slowly, staying in such a yayitive environment for too long, with no other food or entertainment, my younger brother's mood became increasingly irritable. From then on, I not only became their food, but also a punching bag for his anger. Every day, I endured his insults and beatings. He made insignificant cuts on my body with a knife, just to see me beg for mercy. The endless torture made my life a living hell. I couldn't live and couldn't die. By the end, my voice was so hoarse from crying that it sounded like that of an old woman. I had completely lost hope in life. I looked at my mother pleadingly, but she didn't pay any attention to the plea in my eyes. Instead, she skillfully bandaged my wound and then comforted me. "You have to stay alive. Wang Fan likes to eat fresh meat." At that moment, my heart seemed to be frozen and died completely. I, who was barely surviving by drinking rainwater every day, finally closed my eyes forever on a silent night. Recalling all this, my whole body trembled. Every cut from the previous life seemed to be branded on my body, aching faintly. I quickly wiped away my tears, suppressing the pain in my heart, and tried to sort out my emotions. The blood feud is irreconcilable. In this life, I must avenge that pathetic self from the previous life. There were only 7.5 hours left. I quickly entered the high-end community across the street, and used the fingerprint lock to enter the top-floor room of the first building. Because of my parents' patriarchal attitude, I left home early to make a living in society. After going through many hardships, I met my current boss who led me to make money. I also happened to catch up with the trend of making money in the new era, and finally bought this house and a car with full payment last year. Looking at this over 200 square meter top-floor room, the view was so broad that it was hundreds of times better than the small house I used to live in. Remembering that in the previous life, I huddled with them in that small house, and I had to let them eat and drink in the house I bought with my hard-earned money. I even wanted to slap myself. At first, I felt sorry for my father's death. Seeing my mother crying bitterly in front of me, I was soft-hearted for a moment, and actually forgot all the pain I had suffered before, and brought them all to live with me. Who could have thought that this was simply inviting trouble? Now, I'm only glad that I had a grudge because of my parents' patriarchal attitude, and didn't tell them about the two houses. I opened the refrigerator. Since I hadn't been here for a while, some of the vegetables inside were already a bit stale, but I didn't have much time to deal with them. I just took out a few spoiled vegetables and threw them away. Then I opened various grocery, shopping platforms and food delivery platforms. I placed crazy orders for all kinds of fruits, vegetables, frozen meat, snacks, seasonings, daily necessities, etc. I ordered a large quantity of each item, as if I wanted to buy everything. My hand was cramping from clicking, and I sighed at how convenient it was to have delivery platforms. When I scrolled to the cooked food section, I casually ordered a bunch of lobsters, barbecue cakes, fried chicken for myself, and also bought 10 cups of milk tea. After all, these things would no longer be available after the end of the world. Besides the barbecue, the rest could be stored in the refrigerator and eaten for another 2 days. To prevent others from discovering that my house had supplies, I wrote different building numbers for each delivery address and asked for them to be placed in the underground parking lot. Today was a working day, and it was almost afternoon. As long as I was careful when getting on and off the elevator and not seen by people driving, there should be no problem. 5. Having just finished shopping, the large Lala truck I had reserved arrived. After getting in, I told the driver to head to the largest electrical appliance supermarket in our area, planning to buy some freezers, electric fans, and so on. During the journey, I casually ordered several batches of bottled water from different suppliers and had them delivered to the locations on the 2nd floor below my home, the 4th floor below, and the 7th floor below. I learned from the building's residents group when climbing the stairs earlier that these floors were available for rent, so there shouldn't be anyone there. Bottled water is too heavy to carry, and placing it elsewhere would greatly affect the efficiency of moving. Just then my phone rang, and the screen displayed Mom. I suppressed my physical discomfort and pressed the answer button. Don't you have several $100,000 in your bank card? Why is the balance suddenly insufficient and can't be swiped? My mother's shrill voice pierced my eardrums, making my ears ring and clearing my mind a bit. Bank card. I lowered my head and rummaged through my wallet. Well, the card I used to pay for supplies just now was gone. Hurry up and transfer the money to me. I'm still short of 50,000 yuan to pay the bill for taking your brother out to eat. 50,000? I snorted coldly. If it were before, I would definitely be extremely sad. After all, in my entire life, she had never even taken me to a meal that cost 500 yuan. But now, Mom, I'll transfer 100,000 yuan to you later. Buy yourself and your brother 2 new sets of clothes. Seeing that we were about to reach the entrance of the electrical appliance city, I didn't want to waste any more time with her. The more things I bought, the later I could return home. Oh, coincidentally, your brother wants to buy that AJ and a game console. Transfer an extra 20,000 yuan. Before I could say anything, she hung up the phone neatly. The driver next to me remained silent for a long time and then sighed. Alas, if you hadn't called her Mom, I would have thought you a young girl, owed a loan shark. I shrugged, expressing my helplessness. In the end, I still only transferred 100,000 yuan. When the phone rang again, I simply ignored it and stopped looking. Only 6 hours remained. I quickly selected several large freezers and a few silent electric fans. Passing by the electronics section, I casually bought several mobile phones, tablets, and laptops. I paid an extra 2,000 yuan and asked them to fill them with TV dramas, movies, novels, and single-player games. I also managed to get dozens of complimentary power banks through some shrewd maneuvers. When the freezers were being transported, I saw the shelves at the back of their warehouse. Once again, my financial persuasion skills moved the manager, and he made an exception and sold the shelves to me. The Lala truck driver stayed to help them load and arrange the items onto the vehicle, while I took a taxi and left first. Time was too pressing. I didn't have the time to watch them move the things. Anyway, I had given them tips, so there shouldn't be any problems. In the taxi, I directly gave the driver 1,000 yuan and asked him to take a detour in the direction of my home. Whenever we passed a hardware store along the way, I bought some toolkits, hammers, sticks, locks, lights, and so on. When passing a pharmacy, I bought some medicine and a bit of vitamins. When passing a bookstore, I bought a pile of books and comics. At convenience stores, I bought some more snacks and daily necessities. Anyway, having more made me feel more at ease. I was exhausted from buying things. After seeing me get back in the car for the nth time, the driver uncle finally couldn't hold back his curiosity. Girl, what are you doing? I'm supporting the disaster-stricken area. When the driver uncle heard this, he became extremely enthusiastic, and the car speeded up directly. Whenever I got out of the car again, he would get out and help me carry things. With the help, I got home much earlier than I had expected. I gave the driver some medicine and a toolbox, and advised him to go home early today, but he just smiled and waved his hand at me, and gave me a bag of candies that he had originally bought for his son, asking me to convey his greetings to the children in the disaster-stricken area on his behalf. 7. Only 4 hours left. I dragged the things I had bought along the way back home with great difficulty. I had just slumped on the sofa for a few minutes when the Lala truck arrived. I dragged my heavy body downstairs again. The driver had already bent down to carry the heavy items like the freezer for me. Just as I was about to find an excuse to decline politely, I was interrupted by his tone that seemed both happy and nostalgic. After finishing your order, the next order I received happens to be on the way back to my hometown to see my children. I silently helped the driver carry all the things. In the end, I gave the driver some medicine and some vegetables, and told him to finish his work early and go home today. The driver thanked me repeatedly and drove away in the large truck again. Looking at his back, I felt a bit sad. If my relatives had even a fraction of their conscience, I wouldn't have been so heartless. I pulled the trolley and quickly dragged the water and various vegetables, meats, and daily necessities bought online up and down repeatedly. Fortunately, after several trips, I hardly met anyone. Only a few times did I encounter one or two people, but because I covered them with a cloth, others couldn't see what was inside, so everything went smoothly. When there was only 1 hour left until the complete outbreak of zombies, I finally finished moving all the things. I found the cameras that my company had left over from previous purchases. The boss had asked me to keep them, and at that time, I had casually thrown them into this house. I took out some vegetables and a little supplies, and casually picked a few cameras and returned to my former home. 8. Opening the door, fortunately they hadn't come back yet. I quickly hid the cameras, and then connected a small solar panel to the cameras. I used double-sided tape and transparent tape to firmly attach the small solar panel to the air conditioner outdoor unit. This place couldn't be seen from inside the house. Unless the air conditioner was turned on, it was unlikely to be discovered. But turning on the air conditioner would attract zombies, so this was an excellent location. In order not to miss any exciting scenes, this small solar panel would allow me to watch the surveillance, even if the power was cut off later. After making all the other preparations, and just about to leave, my mother and my brother came back. No, it should be Lu Yanchun and Wang Fan who came back. Before opening the door, the laughter and chatting outside could be heard. When they opened the door and saw me, the two of them changed their expressions instantly, and put on a stern face. Wang Fan, as usual, threw the bags with logos in his hands at me. Go and wash these for me, and then wash me some fruits. I want to play games. If it were before, I would probably have obediently gone to wash them like a dog. Why? Because the concept instilled in me by my family since childhood was that my younger brother's status was always the highest. Looking at his disgusting face, besides a trace of fear remaining in my heart, the rest was full of hatred. Thinking of the so-called deep sibling affection that he had tricked me with in the apocalypse, I felt so disgusted that I almost vomited. 9. What are you looking at? Didn't you hear what your brother said? You dead girl, you didn't answer the phone. I don't know what you've been fooling around with all day. You said you'd give 120,000 yuan. Why did you only give 100,000? Perhaps because my gaze at him was too resentful. Lu Yanchun forcefully pulled my ear. Ouch. Mom, stop pulling. I invested the money, and I can't get it back for a while. I suppressed my discomfort and pretended to be my former self, cooperating with the act. What kind of investment? Get it back for me tomorrow. You gave so little money that I couldn't even buy my Chanel dress. Are you happy to see your mother lose face? How could I have given birth to such a worthless thing like you? Lu Yanchun was spitting venom. Didn't I give you 100,000 yuan? I covered my ear in pain. Don't you see your brother bought a bunch of new clothes, shoes, and a game console? Where's the money left to buy my clothes? The more Lu Yanchun talked, the more she seemed to be in the right, and she exerted more and more force with her hand. I was in so much pain from being pulled. Memories of past abuse rushed back into my mind. I endured the pain and looked at Wang Fan, who was lying on the sofa playing games on his own. He was half slumped on the sofa, playing games with a Coke straw in his mouth, and he didn't even glance at our commotion. If I hadn't experienced the previous life, I might have just thought I had a bad relationship with my brother. Now it seems that he has never regarded me as his sister, or even as a human being. I endured the tearing pain in my ear, and looked at the clock hanging on the wall. The clock had pointed to 7:43. My breath suddenly caught. There were only 17 minutes left until the outbreak of zombies, and it would take exactly 10 odd minutes to run back to my place from here. There was no time. 10. Mom, stop pulling. I'll go get the money for you right now. When Lu Yanchun heard this, she let go of my ear doubtfully. Really, she was a doctor who came from a small county, and didn't understand these investments. She turned her gaze to Wang Fan, with an inquiring look in her eyes. I sneered in my heart when I saw this scene. In the past, I might have just thought that Lu Yanchun favored sons over daughters, but now it seems that she completely regarded me as an outsider, and had never believed in me. However, her wishful thinking was wrong. Wang Fan had never studied hard since childhood, and only knew how to fight, drink, and play games all day long. How could he understand such things? But what she didn't know was that this precious son who liked to act like a king at home was best at showing off and being arrogant. Seeing him pretend to think for a while, as expected, he told me to go out and withdraw money, and bring him a fried chicken and Coke by the way. A fake smile filled my entire face, and I quickly said, Okay. Stop. I'll go with you to get it. My smile froze on my face. Finally, after much pleading on my part, she reluctantly let me go out. After closing the door, I ran back to the opposite community at a speed I had never achieved in my life. When pressing the fingerprint at the entrance of the building, my palms were full of sweat due to nervousness, and it took me a long time to press it successfully. When I reached the door of my house, I carefully checked my anti-theft door, and the main door one last time. Miserable screams were already coming from downstairs. My heart tightened. After quickly confirming that everything was locked properly, I closed the door with relief and slumped to the ground. The apocalypse had finally begun. 11. Amid the screams downstairs, I was drinking milk tea and eating the barbecue skewers that had been delivered earlier. I was too lazy to look at the news and hot topics. It was nothing more than reporters being bitten, and the whole nation being in a panic. I had seen it all in the previous life. I opened the residents group of that community. Without exception, everyone was talking about the terrifying things happening outside. The property management was comforting the residents in the group. The government will arrange support. Please don't be afraid, residents. Lock your doors and windows at home and don't go out. With so many people in a chaotic situation, the entire group became a bit chaotic for a moment. The complaints and laments were so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. Until this message at the bottom, the group messages came to an abrupt stop. Is there anyone selling some food? I don't dare to go out at all. There's no food at home. At this time, everyone was still certain ing, and didn't dare to take risks easily. Then that familiar profile picture replied, I have some at home. A single green vegetable costs 50,000 yuan. I curled my lips. My stupid brother had taken the bait. Damn, that's so expensive. Why don't you go rob instead? That's right. We're all neighbors. Sell it to us a bit cheaper, okay? Before leaving home, I deliberately filled the kitchen to the brim with fresh vegetables, fruits with dew on them, and it looked extremely abundant. A bunch of poor people. If you can't afford it, don't talk nonsense. Wang Fan directly posted a screenshot in the group. A rich person directly transferred 500,000 yuan. Then he took several consecutive photos of the food and drinks stocked in the refrigerator and sent them out. The group was silent for a moment. Suddenly, a few wealthy residents emerged. Young man, I'll buy it. I'll buy it. I want some too. I'll transfer 200,000 yuan to you. Can I choose the vegetables? I want it. Sell it to me. I'm willing to buy it all at a high price. I opened the surveillance. The high-definition surveillance was really good. I could even clearly see the grinning faces of the two of them. We're rich, we're rich. Mom, if this goes on, I can become the richest man. Wang Fan was so excited that his eyes were bloodshot. This was the first time in his life that he had so much money in his hands. Lu Yanchun patted him, looking extremely proud. Good, good. My son is really smart. Much smarter than your stupid sister. Looking at the two of them making a fortune from collecting money, I twitched the corners of my mouth. These two idiots were exactly as I had expected. Whether in the previous life or this life, they never understood the preciousness of food. 12. The doors were knocked on one after another. Wang Fan let people into the house to choose food, and by the way, showed off his fully stocked refrigerator with arrogance. Seeing that everyone who came in looked surprised and envious, Wang Fan gradually became swollen with pride. What are you looking at? Hurry up and choose, then get out. You only have 100,000 yuan? Take this lousy cabbage and get lost. Those who were scolded dared not say much. Each person took what they should take, bowed and scraped, and then ran away quickly, fearing that Wang Fan would go back on his word and snatch it back. Those who had bought food flattered Wang Fan in the group, hoping that he would send them more things next time. But the group suddenly fell eerily silent, and no one replied to these sycophants. From the surveillance came Wang Fan's crazy laughter again. Ha ha ha. Today I earned 4 million yuan. I never thought money could be earned so easily. Son, laugh quietly. Be careful of attracting those dirty things outside. Lu Yanchun nervously tugged at her precious son. Wang Fan looked at Lu Yanchun disdainfully. What are you afraid of? The zombies have already entered the opposite building. The door downstairs in our building is still locked, and the zombies can't get in. With Wang Xiaoyu gone, we'll have a good life. They're being eaten by zombies over there, while I'm making big money here. Yes, yes. My son is really lucky. Mom will enjoy happiness with you. Lu Yanchun said with relish and even clicked her tongue. That unlucky Wang Xiaoyu. Fortunately, I didn't go to withdraw money with her. Otherwise, I wouldn't know where I'd be dead on the road now. 13. I was too lazy to listen to their insults about me one after another. Just as I was about to turn off the surveillance, Lu Yanchun let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, the zombies emerged. Otherwise, I really don't know how to get your sister's house. Now that she's dead, after this is over, this house will rightfully be yours. My hand froze on the keyboard, and what Wang Fan said next made me panic. That bitch deserves to be my sister? It's good that she's dead, saving me the trouble of doing it myself, and upholding justice by eliminating my own kin. Wang Fan played with the kitchen knife in his hand with great affection. The cold and glistening knife had been sharpened to a shine. I suddenly closed the computer and curled up into a ball. The smell of death rushed towards me. The scenes of the previous life, along with that knife, crashed into my mind, making me feel so oppressed that I could hardly breathe. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead, and it took me a while to recover. I originally thought that they attacked me in the previous life because they were extremely hungry. So even if there was no zombie outbreak, I wouldn't have survived? Very well. I laughed out loud and sent Lu Yanchun a text message that I had already edited. I couldn't wait to watch your performance, Lu Yanchun. Don't let me down. 14. Early the next morning, I opened a bag of frozen soup dumplings and made a cup of soy milk for breakfast. If it weren't for the screams downstairs, it would have been a wonderful and sumptuous breakfast. In the surveillance, Wang Fan was excitedly talking about how to make another big fortune. Lu Yanchun's expression, however, was very strange, and her tone of agreement was obviously much slower. The door was knocked again. Wang Fan habitually went to open the door, but the fierce-looking man outside made him feel something was wrong. The next second, he was knocked to the ground with a punch by the leading man. Wang Fan covered his stomach and let out a painful scream. Lu Yanchun screamed and tried to help him, but was grabbed by an accomplice behind and slapped twice. The leading man walked in on his own, and the more he walked in, the more Jingxi filled his eyes. Damn, there's really a lot of food. This will be enough for us to eat for a long time. Yes, boss. Fortunately, the family we broke into told us about this place to avoid being robbed. There's a lot of food here and no zombies. It's so great. The lackeys flattered. While pouring the vegetables from the refrigerator into their backpacks, they looked at Wang Fan, who was ashen-faced. You're quite capable, kid. We've broken into so many houses, and you're the only one who opened the door for us on your own initiative. Everyone burst into laughter after hearing this. Wang Fan was so angry that his whole body was shaking. Before he could curse, Lu Yanchun covered his mouth tightly. Dear big brothers, please leave us some food. We're an orphan and a widow. It's not easy for us to live. Watching the refrigerator being gradually emptied, Lu Yanchun's face turned as pale as a sheet. The leading man walked up to them. Looking at Wang Fan, who was full of resentment, he roughly grabbed Wang Fan's hair and spat a thick mouthful of phlegm in his face. Don't act tough with me. Weren't you guys quite capable? Where else is there food? Tell me everything, or 15. Bah. Wang Fan was so angry that he spat fiercely in the man's face. In my entire life, I, Wang Fan, have always been the one to bully others. Who the hell are you? Be sensible and get out of here quickly. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. After hearing Wang Fan's heroic words, Lu Yanchun scrambled to the man's feet and begged him to spare their mother and son. The man seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He kicked away the wailing Lu Yanchun, grabbed Wang Fan, and pressed him hard against the window. Wang Fan was in so much pain from being pressed against the glass. Just as he was about to cry out, he was so frightened by the densely packed zombies downstairs that he stopped making a sound. Those zombies, with their blood-red bodies and half-distorted faces, saw Wang Fan, a living being, and all rushed towards him like crazy, hitting the precarious door downstairs. The shocking scene left Wang Fan unable to organize his words. I'll give you one chance. Will you tell me or not? If not, I'll throw you down right now. There's really no more food at home, big brother. Wang Fan was so scared that he burst into tears. He struggled and shook his head wildly. Where was the arrogant look he had just now? The man sneered and reached for the window lock button. Then go down and feed the zombies. 16. Wait, don't hurt my son. Lu Yanchun quickly crawled over and hugged her son in her arms. It took her a long time to grit her teeth and say, in the wardrobe. There's still a little food in the wardrobe. After she finished speaking, they indeed found some instant noodles in the wardrobe. Immediately, they turned the house upside down. They didn't leave with their bags full until they heard the lackey say that the zombies downstairs were about to break in. Wang Fan, looking at the messy kitchen, vented all his pent-up anger on Lu Yanchun. You old thing. How dare you hide food behind my back? Wang Fan pushed Lu Yanchun to the ground and, ignoring the fear in her eyes, tightly cajoled her neck. That wasn't me. They've taken all the food. What am I going to do? All my meat has been taken away. How are you going to compensate me? Wang Fan shouted heartbreakingly. That was your sister. Ah. Lu Yanchun was choked until her eyes rolled back. You mean Wang Xiaoyu? What do you mean? Explain it clearly to me. Wang Fan let go of his hand. Lu Yanchun immediately got her breath back and gasped for air. She could feel that just a little more, and she would have gone straight to see the king of hell. Thinking of that text message, she believed it a little more and felt even colder. Your sister is still alive. 17. Sure enough, after she said this, Wang Fan called. Wang Xiaoyu, where else did you hide food at home? There's no food left at home. Hurry up and find some food for us. I sneered. Are you crazy, Wang Fan? The instant noodles I hid in the wardrobe were all taken away. Where else is there food at home? What do you mean? How do you know that our instant noodles were taken away? Before he could chatter on, I directly hung up the phone. In the surveillance, he had a sullen face and started arguing with Lu Yanchun again. Give me your phone. No. Lu Yanchun was sweating profusely and held her phone tightly with both hands. The more she did this, the more Wang Fan felt that Lu Yanchun was acting strange. Why won't you give it to me? Did you tip her off? Lu Yanchun shook her head desperately. Just as they were arguing fiercely, the door was knocked again. They were so frightened that they pushed each other. In the end, Lu Yanchun was forcibly pushed to the door and lay on the cats. I had to look outside. Damn it, open the door for me. Bastard. You took the money and won't open the door for us, right? The two of them immediately realized what was going on. But the house had just been ransacked by bandits. Where was there any food? The two of them forced themselves to be mute and didn't say a word. The people outside seemed to know that they were pretending to be dead and directly started ramming the door. The door was knocked loudly. I watched as Wang Fan's face turned pale with fear, and his hands were shaking as he called me again. Wang Xiaoyu. Sister. I was wrong. I was ignorant before. You must have left some food for the family, right? Save me. There are a bunch of people outside asking for food. Our door is about to be smashed. Hearing that I didn't speak, Wang Fan looked at the Yaoyurjoy door, and the swear words being shouted outside. He was so anxious that he started to cry. Sister, I beg you. Our door is really going to be smashed. If they come in and don't get what they should, they will definitely kill me. I pretended to sigh. Wang Fan, after all, you are my own brother. I wouldn't just watch you be killed. These extremely sanctimonious words almost made me vomit. Sure enough, Wang Fan was overjoyed. Sister, I knew you were the best to me. Well, I'll charge you 500,000 yuan for one vegetable. Once the payment is received, I'll tell you where the vegetables are. 18. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. 10 seconds later. Wang Xiaoyu, are you crazy? Wang Fan flew into a rage. What? Can't you afford it? If you can't afford it, don't talk nonsense. As I said this, I pretended to hang up the phone. Wang Fan hurriedly said no. Then, several of my bank cards received transfer notifications. A total of 8 million yuan was transferred. Sister, now you can tell me, right? The door is about to be broken open. Wang Fan looked at the door with tears in his eyes. This was just an ordinary door, and its bearing capacity wasn't that strong. Don't worry. I directly hung up the phone. Don't worry. How could I let you die so easily? In the surveillance, Wang Fan was so angry that his whole body was shaking when he heard the beeping sound after the call was hung up. Just as he was about to call back to question me, he heard the screams outside. Ah, the zombies have rushed in. Run. Outside, accompanied by the roars of the zombies and countless screams, it was in chaos. My goodness, fortunately the zombies came in. Lu Yanqun was so frightened that she broke out in a cold sweat, and quickly moved several heavy objects to block the door. Wang Fan was stunned for a moment, and then he started swearing. As soon as he opened his mouth, the zombies outside heard the sound and rushed over, frantically pounding on the already precarious door. Wang Fan was so scared that he quickly covered his mouth. Fortunately, a more tragic scream came from the other side, attracting the zombies at the door away. Then my phone rang again. Wang Fan secretly cursed me in a low voice. Wang Xiaoyu, you knew the zombies would come, didn't you? Give me back my money. Of course I knew. I was watching the surveillance at the door, calculating the time for the zombies to reach this floor and timing it. Sorry, no money. Have the guts to come out and get it from me. There were zombies outside. Given him 800 guts, Wang Fan wouldn't dare to go out. Otherwise, they wouldn't have targeted me in the previous life. You bitch. Either give me back my money or tell me where the food is. How could I not tell you? After all, I received the payment. The food is in the fire hydrant next to the elevator outside. Go and get it. After hearing this, Wang Fan was so angry that he wished he could crush the phone. I happily hung up the phone. And this was just the beginning. 19. In the following days, the water and electricity were cut off one after another. On the contrary, the text messages of Wang Fan and Lu Yanqun's abuse never stopped. I drank the soup just cooked in the rice cooker, and let out a contented sigh. Fortunately, I once saw on Douyin that solar panels save electricity. Out of curiosity, I bought a few. I didn't expect it to be so convenient now. I watched in the surveillance as the two of them sat slumped on the sofa, each with their own thoughts, and were silent for a while. In these few days, Wang Fan managed to find a few packs of snacks he had hidden under his bed before. He completely hoarded them all for himself, and didn't leave a single bite for his mother. Wang Fan still had a bit of strength left, and was mumbling on the sofa that he was starving to death. However, Lu Yanqun hadn't eaten a single thing in these past few days, and was so hungry that she didn't even want to talk. Wang Fan stroked his stomach, which hadn't had food for several days, and then remembered the kind reminder I had sent him last night. There was meat in the fire hydrant. Sure enough, after he hesitated for a long time, he suddenly pushed Lu Yanqun, who was slumped on the sofa. Wang Xiaoyu said before that there was food in the fire hydrant outside. Why don't you go and bring it in? Lu Yanqun looked at him in disbelief. She was at an age where one foot could be said to be in the grave, while he was in the prime of his life. How could he ask his old mother to go out and take risks? What are you looking at? I told you to go, so go. Wang Fan still thought of himself as the young master, who had been indulged in the past. I clicked my tongue. The tone of these two mother-son, when ordering others around, was exactly the same. Taking advantage of the fact that there were no zombies outside for the moment, Wang Fan directly grabbed Lu Yanqun's collar and pushed her towards the door. Lu Yanqun saw the zombies wandering not far away. Her face turned deathly pale, and she clung tightly to the door, refusing to let go. You old thing, let go quickly. Do you want your son to starve to death? Son, your mother is so old. How could I possibly outrun the zombies? You're trying to kill me. Lu Yanqun cried out in despair. Wang Fan was so anxious that his eyes were ablaze with anger. At this moment, the zombies heard the noise here and rushed over, their bodies ing rapidly. Wang Fan saw the ferocious looking zombies running towards them, and was so frightened that he forgot to react. Lu Yanqun took the opportunity to slip in and closed the door. As soon as the door was closed, countless zombies were roaring outside and pounding fiercely on the door. The already damaged door now had a crack. It wouldn't be long before the door was completely destroyed. The two of them crawled on their knees in fear and hid in the bedroom, locking the door. After a while, they heard the sound of heavy objects being smashed outside. Their door must have been destroyed. The two of them huddled together, shaking all over, not daring to make a sound. The slow roars of the zombies outside were pounding mercilessly on their hearts. 20. In these 2 days, they were trapped in the bedroom and couldn't get out. When they wanted to use the toilet, they had to defecate in their clothes, wrap it up, and put it in the corner. The enclosed room emitted a disgusting sour smell. Lu Yanqun hadn't eaten for several days. Coupled with the nauseating smell in the air, she was almost half dead. I watched as she already had a deathly look on her face, and used the computer to control and turn on the surveillance speaker in the bedroom. There's food hidden in this room. Lu Yanchun gave a sudden shudder, and her eyes suddenly became bright. Where? Wang Fan was also so hungry that he ignored the surveillance in the room. All they wanted now was to survive. I didn't respond and continued on my own. Do you know where I am now? I'm in a large flat in another community, with so much food that I couldn't finish it even in my next life. When Wang Fan heard this, Higorong got angry again. I've wanted to ask before. Bitch, how dare you say that? Hurry up and come over to pick us up. I'm almost starving to death. Lu Yanchun knelt on the ground, trembling and kowtowed randomly. Daughter, Mom was wrong. Mom is almost starving to death. I don't ask you to pick us up. Can you tell me where the food hidden in this room is? You old fool. Wang Fan slapped Lu Yanchun in the face. We can find the food hidden in the room ourselves. Now we need her to get us out of this hellhole. Fine, I'll come and pick you up. I said yo-yo and directly hung up the phone. Wang Fan went crazy and ransacked the bedroom, but in the end he found nothing. Lu Yanchun looked desperate and burst into tears. You ungrateful child. I should have let that man throw you down when he wanted to. 21. Wang Fan thought of the scene of being pressed against the window and felt faux pas. You old fool, what nonsense are you talking about? If you hadn't saved me then, you would have no son. Lu Yanchun slapped away Wang Fan's hand that was trying to pull her up. Her eyes were already filled with distrust. Other people have sons to support them in old age. I have a son who is a curse. What are you talk? Wang Fan looked at the somewhat crazy Lu Yanchun and took a few steps back in fear. Lu Yanchun glared at him with her eyes and was about to slap Wang Fan. But now she had no strength left. Instead, she was pushed heavily to the ground by Wang Fan. Looking at her precious son, whom she had once held in her hands for fear of hurting him, she let out a cheesum laugh. Good. You're really my good son. Now you actually treat your mother like this. Well, after all, you're the one who could have killed your own father. This is nothing compared to that. She ignored Wang Fan's questions and continued to mock herself. If it weren't for your sister texting me a while ago, I would have been kept in the dark for the rest of my life. Your father was a truck driver. Just because he criticized you for not studying hard and told you to study well, you put sleeping pills in his cup? You were trying to kill your father. That bitch couldn't possibly know. Wang Fan's face was filled with thinking, and his expression said it all. Looking at Lu Yanchun, who was slumped on the ground, after a while, disgust showed in Wang Fan's eyes, and he directly sneered. Don't talk about me. Weren't you happy enough when you received the insurance compensation? Lu Yanchun was so angry that she almost couldn't catch her breath. The person is already dead. I have to take what I deserve, right? If you hadn't been thinking about this house, that money would have been enough for us to live a good life in that county for a lifetime. Unlike these city people, who are all so uneducated. If you hadn't told me since I was a child that everything of my sister's was mine, including the house, would I have come here so eagerly? Wang Fan was so angry that he chadjo Lu Yanchun's neck, and Lu Yanchun also gritted her teeth and started scratching. Wang Fan's face was scratched by Lu Yanchun's nails. Just as he was about to punch her to death in anger, some images suddenly flashed through his mind. In the images, he was holding a knife and slashing at a woman tied to the bed, and that woman also scratched him with her hands. Wang Fan's mind went blank, and his hand, following his body's instincts, took out the knife tucked in his belt. He seemed to hear his mother's screams in his ears. When he came to his senses again, he saw Lu Yanchun's left foot, which was bleeding profusely, and his shiny sharpened knife was stuck in her foot. 22. Lu Yanchun had a sock stuffed in her mouth by Wang Fan, and was awkwardly bandaging herself. She was in so much pain that she couldn't even make a sound. I was very surprised that Lu Yanchun was still alive in such a state, but looking at her pale face, I guess she wouldn't last long. I told them that the food was in the ceiling above the suspended ceiling. Wang Fangaran took out some bread, water, and a simple first aid kit. Wang Fan didn't dare to be too rude to me now. When I told him where the food was, he very obediently apologized to me and asked me when I would come to pick him up. With these foods and some disinfectant and hemostatic medicine, Lu Yanchun's face looked a little better. I heaved a sigh of relief. Dying so easily was not the ending I had chosen for them. I drank the freshly brewed fragrant coffee. These days, I was always woken up by dreams of the previous life when I slept, and I was very unhappy. Watching the surveillance these days, Lu Yanchun trembled whenever she made eye contact with Wang Fan, and didn't dare to say a word to him. They had been locked in the bedroom for too long, coupled with the smell of excrement and urine all day long, and Lu Yanchun's strange instinct. Wang Fan couldn't take it anymore. Yes, he had started domestic violence against Lu Yanchun, just like he had done to me in the previous life. But today, instead of punching and kicking Lu Yanchun, he directly took out a knife and cut off Lu Yanchun's bandaged left foot. Before Lu Yanchun's scream could be uttered, she was slapped to the ground by Wang Fan. Sister can only pick up one person, and that person can only be me. It's better to get rid of you. You're a disaster. Maybe after the zombies are gone, you'll go to court and sue me. You can die now. Wang Fan said viciously, and then ran obsequiously to the surveillance. Sister, Mom's leg is broken, and she can't walk. Since you can only pick up one person, pick me up. I'm a man and can help you fight the zombies. I couldn't help but laugh out loud when I heard this. If you could fight the zombies, would you have eaten me in the previous life? Would you have let your elderly mother go out to get food, while you hid at home in this life? I quickly cleared my throat and said with regret. Brother, How could you do this? After all, she is our mother. Seeing a glimmer of warmth in Lu Yanchun's eyes, I immediately poured cold water on her. Alas, I pretended to be heartbroken. Well then, after all, you are the only male in our family. Who else should I pick up if not you? Mom, don't you think so? This is what you taught me since I was a child. I was unconvinced before, and you even beat me up. Lu Yanchun was obviously stunned. Ignoring the pain in her foot, she cried and begged in a hoarse voice. Daughter, Mom was wrong. Mom was really muddle-headed before. Please save Mom. Your brother is a scoundrel. But this is what you taught me since I was a child. When I was in junior high school, because I didn't give him pocket money, he pushed me down the stairs. I had a comminuted fracture for half a year. I cried to you that he was a scoundrel. But you said he was the only male in our family, and I should let him have his way. Oh, and when my admission notice from a top 985 university was sent to our home, you said the family couldn't afford to send 2 people to school. You sacrificed me and let him go to school. Now sacrificing you to let your brother survive is no problem, right? 23. With every word I said, Lu Yanchun's body became more and more janging. She dragged her leg and slowly crawled to the surveillance, smiling uglier than crying. Daughter, Mom just felt sorry for your brother being young. There was no other meaning. Oh, then I won't talk about those. Tell me, what month and day is my birthday? Lu Yanchun was obviously stunned. Her Gunlea mouth opened and closed, but she couldn't utter a single word. That's right. From childhood to adulthood, she had only shown Baban Hehu to her son. As for her daughter, it seemed that she had never even held a birthday party for her. The only time seemed to be before Wang Fan was born, but it was so long ago that she really couldn't remember exactly which day it was. I sneered and then said gently, Wang Fan, I'll come to pick you up in a few days. Wang Fan was overjoyed. Okay, sister. After seeing me hang up the surveillance, he turned around and knocked Lu Yanchun to the ground. I'm a scoundrel? You're not a good person either. Son, I'm your mother. Lu Yanchun's desperate cries didn't stop Wang Fan. I turned off the surveillance, took a fragrant bath with stored water, and fried a Western-style steak for dinner. When I turned on the camera again, I almost vomited. Wang Fan still cut off Lu Yanchun's left leg and was roasting it with the lighter in his bedroom and eating it. The scene made me feel extremely uncomfortable, but I had also guessed this scene, so I quickly recovered. When the zombies came, food was scarce, and this time, the food was Lu Yanchun. When he asked Lu Yanchun if she wanted to eat the meat, Lu Yanchun also vomited all over the place. I looked down at the steak on my plate, which was as red as Lu Yanchun's leg. Suddenly, I lost my appetite and threw it into the trash can. 24. Wang Fan treated her just as he had treated me in the previous life. His technique of cutting meat was extremely proficient, knowing how to keep the person from dying too quickly. During this period, Wang Fan kept asking me when I would come to pick him up, and I just fui told him to wait a little longer. Lu Yanchun's face was ashen, her eyes already devoid of sansar, and she just slumped in the corner. However, Wang Fan was not so merciful to her. In order to prevent her from starving to death, he force-fed her meat. She vomited as she ate, and eventually became a walking corpse. Another 2 months passed, and Wang Fan got tired of eating. He cried and begged me to give him some food. I told him that there were many snacks and steaks in the fire hydrant outside, and he could use a lighter to roast the meat. Wang Fan now believed every word I said. After several days of mental preparation, he finally secretly opened the bedroom door that had been closed for a long time. The main door had been destroyed, and the zombies seemed to have left as they couldn't find anyone. Wang Fan gasped, slipped outside, and then quickly ran to the elevator entrance. He took out a large black package from the fire hydrant. Holding the heavy package, Wang Fan was excited and walking back when he saw a zombie at the doorstep. The zombie's eyes lit up when it saw a living person and rushed over at a full-speed sprint. Wang Fan was so scared that he ran in the opposite direction, holding the package, but he didn't expect there to be more zombies ahead. Wang Fan closed his eyes, and his legs trembled non-stop. Just then, the door in front of him was opened, and he was dragged in. The door closed. Before Wang Fan could see the person in front of him clearly, and was about to stutter out his thanks, the package in his hand was snatched away. Oh, it's you again. Wang Fan looked at the few familiar people in front of him, and his face turned deathly pale. 25. After Wang Fan went to get the food, he never came back. I was reluctant to let Wang Fan be directly bitten to death by the zombies. I took out the drone at home and flew it to that community to look for Wang Fan. After searching around, I didn't find Wang Fan in the form of a zombie, and he ran in the opposite direction in the end. Could it be that he hid in some open house? I made a prompt decision, and then controlled the drone to search along the windows on my floor. Sure enough, my guess was correct. He was in the house diagonally opposite ours, and the people in the house were exactly those bandits who had robbed the vegetables from the house at the beginning. The sound, receiving effect through the window was not very good. Roughly speaking, Wang Fan delivered himself to their door again, but the things in the package had already gone bad. It could be eaten, but it might cause diarrhea. I originally wanted Wang Fan to experience being chased by zombies, and then barely survive by eating this rotten food that even pigs wouldn't eat. I didn't expect to be preempted. What happened next was even more unexpected to me. These few big men hadn't had a sex life for several months. Although Wang Fan looked a bit long bai, he was still Mencheng Sansur, a handsome young man. So, Wang Fan was pinned down by a group of men. His pleas and shouts couldn't save the situation, and his precious knife, which had always been tucked in his waist, was also casually thrown to the ground along with his clothes. 26. On the surveillance side, Lu Yanchun was almost at her last gasp. Since Wang Fan couldn't go back, I could only use the drone to send Lu Yanchun a little food and drink every day. She wanted to die. Countless times, she cried in front of my drone and begged me to kill her. But I just wouldn't let her. She tightly closed her mouth and refused to eat the bread I sent her. I used one drone to hit her stomach. When she opened her mouth to shout in pain, I took the opportunity to use another drone to throw the bread into her mouth. She choked several times, and then rushed to drink water. Once she asked me, "Daughter, have you forgiven me?" I replied coldly, "No, I'm afraid Wang Fan will be hungry. At least when he comes back, he can eat something fresh." I returned these words to her exactly as she had said them to me. After hearing this, she became listless again, with a vacant look in her eyes as heartbroken as I had been once. And on the drone side, Wang Fan was also being tortured to the brink of death. These few big men took turns abusing him every day. During this period, they had also caught some girls, but before he could feel lucky for a while, these girls were thrown out of the window alive because they resisted too much and were killed instantly. Wang Fan's face turned deathly pale with fear. Being greedy for life and afraid of death, he gradually accepted all this in silence. Another few months passed, and these bandits couldn't find any food when they went out. Unable to find food, they just stayed at home all day torturing Wang Fan. Perhaps because the venting was too intense, they even dislocated his arm. After another period of time, they hadn't eaten for a long time either. The way they looked at Wang Fan became more and more hunjua. Finally one day Wang Fan ran out crazily, because he overheard them deciding to eat him. He staggered back home and rushed into the bedroom. When he saw Lu Yanchun, he was already in tears. "Mom!" Lu Yanchun's face looked even better than Wang Fan's. After all, Wang Fan hadn't had a proper meal over there. Now he was already emaciated from hunger, and his whole body stank. Wang Fan rushed into Lu Yanchun's arms and Lu Yanchun picked up the hammer beside her and hit Wang Fan's head hard. D. You still want to eat me?" Wang Fan cried out in pain. Seeing the surveillance, he begged me with tears in his eyes. Sister, save me," I sneered. "You also deserve to be my brother? It's good that you die, saving me the trouble of doing it myself, and upholding justice by eliminating my own kin." Wang Fan listened to these familiar-sounding words. Before he could explain, Lu Yanchun smashed the hammer into his face. 27. It had been a year since the apocalypse began, and snow was falling from the sky. I was eating potato chips while watching the downloaded TV series, crying and sighing over the peerless love between the Moon Lord and the goddess. Suddenly, the radio that had been placed beside me emitted a hissing signal. I was so excited that I quickly paused the TV series and turned up the volume of the radio to the maximum. The familiar official voice said that the country had solved most of the zombie problems and had also built a people's base. People without supplies could go there to receive them. It wouldn't be long before the country would eliminate all zombies. People were hoped not to give up. After hearing this, my heart was filled with excitement. Looking at the mountain, like supplies at home, I thought that I might as well donate some to the base. Anyway, there was so much that it would probably take me more than 10 years to finish eating. I waited for another period of time. Now there were many military vehicles on the road to pick up the people and take them to the base. I sorted out 50 boxes of supplies, took my familiar small trolley, and dragged them down one by one. When I gave them to those soldiers in military uniforms, they were so moved that they had tears in their eyes and insisted on taking me to the base to have a look to express their sincere gratitude. They also told me that there were basically no zombies now. If I really wasn't at ease, they would send me back when they went out on a mission again tomorrow. I didn't want to dampen their expectant eyes, and I was also a bit curious about the outside world that I hadn't seen in the previous life, so I went there with them. The base was transformed from a school. It was very large, well organized, and in perfect order. The people in the base all had smiles on their faces, which I hadn't seen for a long time. After they learned that I had donated so many supplies, they all came over to thank me. I was wandering around the base aimlessly when a mother led a little boy towards me. "Sister, excuse me, have you ever been abroad?" The little boy asked me timidly. I squatted down and asked gently, "No, why, little friend?" He hugged the bag of candies in his arms and didn't speak. I immediately recognized these as the candies given to me by the driver uncle when I was buying supplies. At that time, I lied to him that they were for the children in the disaster-stricken area, so I thought of passing on this love and giving them to the children here. I touched his head. "These candies were given to sister by a driver uncle. He asked me to give them to you lovely little friends." After hearing this, the little boy choked up. "My dad is a driver. He knows a lot of people. These candies aren't sold in China yet." My dad called Mom for the last time and said he had asked someone to buy them. But that day, I didn't wait for Dad. I was suddenly stunned, and the words got stuck in my throat, and I couldn't say them. The little boy cried and threw himself into his mother's arms. His mother held back the tears in her eyes and gently patted the little boy's back. "It's okay. Dad will be very happy." These candies still reached Xiaobao's hands. "Sister, can I not share these candies with other children?" I shed tears, thinking of the driver uncle who had accompanied me to move things around with a smile. I nodded heavily. These are yours originally. Don't get separated from Dad this time. 28. Before long, the last zombie was killed in Xinjiang. The reason was that the zombie ran too fast on the grassland, and it took them a long time just to chase and kill it. I returned to my former home. When I opened the door of the room, a stench almost knocked me down. Lu Yanxun was still slumped in that corner, trembling, with blood all over her mouth. Beside her was Wang Fan, who had already died and stank. His face was destroyed, his arm was dislocated, and his eyes were wide open, as if he couldn't rest in peace. Wang Fan's limbs had also disappeared. The result was Kushangerjur. Lu Yanxun had also eaten Wang Fan. I sent Lu Yanxun to the hospital. Her lower body was completely gone, and there was some rot and stench around her waist. The doctor determined that she was paralyzed for life. Another month passed, and Lu Yanxun's mind became a little clearer. I leaned close to her ear and pretended to remind her. Oh Mom, why did you eat your brother? He was the only male in our family. How can he carry on the family line in the future? She shuddered all over. Fear and terror made her body tremble. She vomited and fell out of bed, sitting on the ground. She sat slumped on the ground, not caring about the strange looks from others, crying and laughing alternately. Maybe she was crying because she no longer had a son, or maybe she was laughing because he was finally dead. A few days later, the doctor sent me a message saying that Lu Yanxun had schizophrenia and depression. She would either try to kill people, or try to jump off a building. A few days later, the doctor told me that she really jumped out of the hospital ward. Fortunately, there was a bush below, so she managed to save her life. But she had a comminuted fracture. I went to the hospital to see her, just as she had seen me lying in the hospital bed with a fracture once. Useless thing. How could you get a comminuted fracture? It's a waste of money to be alive. You might as well die. These were the words she had once scolded me with. Now I returned them to her one by one. I was standing here in good health, while she could only be paralyzed in bed for life, and could never leave there. After countless years passed, when I had forgotten about her, and she had no one to take care of her, and was paralyzed, would she also die in a quiet night like I had once? After leaving the hospital, I went to the Public Security Sub-Bureau and changed my name. From then on, there was no longer Wang Xiaoyu in the world, and I hoped that I could live happily forever. Of course I would definitely live happily. After all, I still had 8 million yuan in my bank card.